You've tuned into InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, a video podcast series. Our episode starts right now. Here's your host, Dominique Vale.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, where you can check in for your dose of stigma-breaking, humor-filling, motivation-loving life hacks and empowering tips for all of the medically adultish people in your life. I'm Dominique Vale, founder of InvisiYouth Charity and host of the InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, and today is Season 5, Episode 74. This is an episode I know many of you are going to love because while we're a nonprofit that supports young adults with chronic illness and disability, so many of us value a good nurse in our life. Plus, my mom, as you guys know, is one of our board members and has been a nurse for over 43 years. And so having an episode dedicated to nurses has been something we've wanted since Season 1. And I am thrilled that we're getting to do it today in the best possible way with our two special guests from the nonprofit organization Operation Happy Nurse. We have founder Shannon McPeek and board president Mallori Walker. Launched in 2019 by Shannon, the aim for OHN has been to help those in the nursing profession battle work-related stress, anxiety, and depression, and end the stigma around mental health. They offer some really incredible and free resources in their digital community that are engaging with nurses and showcasing the practice of self-care and stress release, and talking about the issues that they can face while working in the medical community. They have things like a book club, nutritional and fitness supports, a discussion board, podcasts, and so much more. OHN really is empowering those that help us to not only fill their cups so they can fill ours back in return. So I'm super thrilled to have them both. Shannon has spent her years in nursing in the neonatal portion of the nursing community and now is going to be running OHN full-time, joining me in the philanthropy world. And Mallori has been a pediatric nurse practitioner with an instructor at Purdue University School of Nursing. And so I'm really thrilled to get to have two wonderful nurses and people from OHN with us today. So Shannon and Mallori, welcome to the show.
We're happy to be here.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm super excited to have you both on. As I said, I'm always partial to my nurses, so this is just a guilty pleasure episode on my end as well. And as always, before we jump into our first segment, I have a little bit of housekeeping for everyone. Before we jump in, as always, we remind you to subscribe to InvisiYouth Chat Sessions if you're watching on our YouTube channel, and if you are listening on any audio podcast platform. So you'll have an hour to make sure you make that button click and happen for us on that. And also, because of what we're doing this month at InvisiYouth, it's a reminder that the whole month of September, we have our first fundraising activism campaign in celebration of us launching InvisiYouth's Galaxy community, celebrating all of the unique people in the chronic illness and disability space under our one galaxy. And we have our hashtag ShowMyStarChallenge happening now, where we're encouraging all of you to draw a star anywhere and any way you want. Take a photo of a movie star if you have that option for yourself too. And you put that hashtag ShowMyStar, tag InvisiYouth in it, and you get to join our community by either donating $1 or £1 or signing up for our free newsletter, The Galaxy Hub. And make sure you keep that challenge rolling and challenge some of your friends to show their star as well and join our incredible community of young adults with chronic illness and disability and their supporters. And make sure we can keep the ball rolling of raising more awareness on how diverse and wide this incredible community of young people are. So we'll have all notes about that in the description and show notes too, so you can join in. And without further ado, we're going to get to know Shannon and Mallori more, and we're doing our 5-second challenge.
5-second challenge. 5-second challenge.
5-second challenge is where we get to know our guests, and we now have a spin because we have two, so I get to ping pong questions between these two ladies. And naturally, I'm going to have 5 seconds to read out these questions, so I've given myself the challenge as well on top of it. So, okay, we're going to go first with Shannon. Why did you choose going into nursing?
That's a tough question, but I'm going to answer it as quickly as I can. But I always knew that I had a caregiver in me whenever someone would get injured or things like that, I automatically would run to the situation. I was always a fighter of sorts, and nurses, were fighters. So I think that's what really led me to the profession. But if I'm being completely bluntly honest, I thought it was going to be easier than medical school, which, by the way, Mallori can tell you that it's not. It's really hard. My first day there, they were like, this is one of the hardest programs in the country. And I was like, well, great. I did not know this, but I'm very happy I made that decision, was ignorant back then because it led me here.
I love that. And switching off, even going about nursing school, Mallori, what's one thing of practicing nursing that you wish they taught you in nursing school?
Oh gosh, these are tough questions. One thing that I wish I was taught, I think maybe how much joy I would get out of this career, because as Shannon said, like during nursing school, it's hard and you want to walk away and leave pretty much every day. But obviously we didn't, or we wouldn't be here. And then when you get out and you're practicing, and now for me in a provider role, it's the joy and the satisfaction of getting to take care of, for me specifically, young people and watching them grow over the, that childhood pediatric lifespan. So the joy of it.
I love that. Such a nice answer too.
I promise.
Shannon, how did you come up with the name Operation Happy Nurse?
I wish I could take credit for this. I really do. But my sister is a lovely, lovely person. She's a copywriter. She has written her own novel, short stories. She's amazing at creating titles based on vibes that you're feeling. So I literally just sent her colors I liked, energies that I wanted it to portray, my population, and she came up with Operation Happy Nurse. So I cannot take credit, but I am related to her. So mildly I can.
I do that with my sister all the time. I'm like, by bloodline, yes. I can take half credit here.
Yes, exactly.
Mallori, what is one trait that you feel nurses excel at because of the job they do versus people in any other profession?
We hear this word a lot in nursing, so I sometimes cringe when I use it, but I have to say like resiliency. And I don't mean it like we push ourselves to the brink and we don't take care of ourselves. I don't mean that. I would say, I would use another term, but I want to keep it PG-13. So I'll just say resilient. But if I didn't keep it PG, it would be like bad, you know what, after it. So, and in that sense, I just mean we are a doer of all things, and we are capable of so much more than people realize that we do as nurses. So I'm using maybe resilience 2.0, like the bad, you know what version of resilience. So there we go.
I love that. Oh my God. And then Shannon, what is one piece of advice you've gotten while from other nurses or people you've worked with doing OHN that really has resonated with you?
I think that the biggest advice that I got was probably from one of my board members at the start of this all. When I came up with this idea and we did some research and whatnot, I brought it to one of my board members. And, when you come up with something, you're like, well, it seems like a lot of work to get it going. You know that. You started it, right? And she sat me down and she's like, you've found something here. You're a passionate individual. You are strong. Like, you can create something from this and make the world a better place. So I implore you not to give up on this. Like, keep pushing forward on this because it's going to be something. And I truly believe that without her saying that to me at the beginning stages, like this was just a bud of an idea. I literally just brought it to her. And with her being in the nonprofit space for years, to say that to me, I really think she gave me the perseverance that I needed to continue forward for this or with this. And kind of, I keep that in the back of my head when I'm feeling down. I just see the positivity and the commitment that she had, barely knowing me and barely knowing the cause. And that stays with me. So I'm very, very grateful for her trust from the beginning.
That's impactful. Yeah. Especially in this line of work and even your own too, when you have something that you can call back to is really beneficial. Yeah. So I resonate with that. Mallori, is there a resource that comes from OHN that is one of your favorites or one of the favorite things that they produce?
Yeah, I So I've participated from afar, if this makes sense. I love one of the newest editions, which is actually the workouts for the caregivers. I'm huge into fitness. I teach fitness classes throughout the week. And so that has been one of my most exciting things, because that's personally how I relieve stress and worry. I get on the treadmill, or I'll go take a group fitness class, and it's amazing. I mean, the attendance and these are taking off. I'll just say that. So I think there are a lot of us in healthcare that really, especially nurses, that really take to working out as our stress relief. So it's been a huge hit. So I do plan on getting to one in person, but I vicariously live through Shannon as she's telling me about them. So I think that's one of the ones that I appreciate the most. But as you've done your research, there's so many resources that are available, from the book club to just dietary needs and cooking and all of that, recipes. So there are a ton to choose from and take advantage of. But the fitness junkie in me loves the workout for the caregiver. So I love it.
I have to ask now, Shannon, we'll make this our last question. Then what is your favorite resource that you guys have?
Oh, gosh.
You're it's like picking a favorite child. This is what happens when people ask me the same thing.
Did I take your answer, Shannon?
Listen. I love a lot of it, right? I love fitness for the caregivers because besides the workout, the community aspect is just incredible. Like at the last one, I could literally cry thinking about it, because at the last one, when everyone was done, just the energy that was felt between everyone in the community was just so beautiful. But if I'm not going to take that answer, and there's a lot of things I love about Operation Happy Nurse, but the book club is very cool. We get to actually give our questions to the authors at the end of each month, or while we're reading the book, and the author will directly answer our questions. And we've gotten some amazing authors. I don't know if there's any historical fiction people out there, but Kate Quinn has come and answered our questions. We get some really cool people. And so while you're reading the book and you're like, I wonder what they were thinking here, well, you can literally ask them. So I think that is just so cool. And I'm really grateful for all those authors, because they're all donating their time to do this. So I think that might be one of my favorites. And we also hit a variety of genres. So I think I've expanded my reading library through this. So I love that one.
Oh, I like that too.
Can
I love a good book club.
Yeah, go. And one other thing. Sorry. And Shannon pointed on it, and I just want to say, for everyone that gets to listen to this, I think what's really cool about Operation Happy Nurse is how many people so willingly give their time or energy, because they know that this organization is so powerful in the impact that it's having on nurses. And I just think, in a world where sometimes we don't hear a lot of good, for someone to just give their time for free, and as they believe in what Shannon is doing, I think that gives me goosebumps, and that makes me proud to be a part of this. And it just says a lot to what Shannon is doing and what she's built over the last several years. So I just wanted to throw that in, because I think that's really important to highlight.
That's so true. Yeah, definitely. From a fellow philanthropist, it's always 8 years in, it still astounds me when people will donate their time or services to us. I'm always still like, wow, really? You want to? Every time. So I appreciate that. And before we go to our next segment, you guys are off the clock on rapid fire questions. So now it's just smooth conversation for the rest of the episode. But before we do that, I always like to remind everyone a way you can support InvisiYouth charity, and that's doing a little bit of shopping. So we have our InvisiYouth charity shop with its first item inside of it, our Subtle Activist Color Block bracelet. They are sitting next to me on the table. I'm wearing a couple of them now. They are gray and yellow adjustable bracelets that are made by our volunteers with chronic illness and disability and shipped by them. And 100% of all donations go directly towards InvisiYouth Charity's resources and programs we provide for free every month. They're only $4 with free global shipping. So it's basically like making a free donation to charity by buying a bracelet. And we call it our Subtle Activist bracelet because we think of it as the Starbucks cup in that Game of Thrones scene that wasn't supposed to be there. We want you to wear it and get a little conversation going about, ooh, what's that bracelet for? And then you guys can tell people that you're supporting a nonprofit helping empower young people with chronic illness and disability. So if you are in the market for a really inexpensive $4 handmade bracelet that's quite chic and fun to wear, you can shop on our Etsy page. Our link is in the description and show notes for that. And without further ado, we're going to Path to Power.
Path to Power.
Path to Power is our segment where we get to talk about the how-tos on owning your health, your career, and owning your path of empowerment in life. And so naturally, having Shannon and Mallori on the show, we wanted to get real on how to infuse that well-being into the lives of nurses and those in the community and healthcare space so they can feel fully well-rounded and supported while they're in their profession. So Shannon, I wanted to ask, I know at the top I said that you started OHN from your own experience dealing with anxiety while working in the nursing profession, but what made you go from wanting to find ways to help yourself cope and improve yourself to then going, I want to take this a step further and then help others that are probably experiencing the same thing?
So when I first started nursing, in my first 2 years, I was a staff nurse, and like you had mentioned, I struggled a lot with my mental health. In doing so, I started exploring different options. Even though I loved the NICU, I started exploring different ways of that I could still make a difference in the world without having to be bedside, which stinks because I really, really loved NICU. So while doing that, I decided to volunteer for March of Dimes in Washington, D.C., and it was an incredible experience. I found a love for that energy of the nonprofit world, the kindness that you guys mentioned. I really enjoyed it. And later on, I decided, you know what, I'm not quite done with bedside. I'm going to start travel nursing. So when I started speaking to one of my friends at the hospital I was working at, she asked me if I was going to continue volunteering for March of Dimes while I hopped around to different cities. And I don't know why I said this, but I did. I just turned to her and I was like, well, I kind of wish that there was a nonprofit for mental health in nursing so that we can support those around us. I mean, I struggled a lot. I was able to pull myself out of it, but I really wish I could volunteer for an organization like that. So her and I did some research, and we came to find out that back in 2018, there was no such thing. And so hence Operation Happy Nurse, I decided there should be, and here we are today.
Yeah, and that's really impactful because it is, like you said, a big thing we'll always say with InvisiYouth. A lot of our volunteers will come in saying, well, I can't always fix my own health or my own illness or disability. So to be able to volunteer for a charity, it really helps them feel like they're able to just manage and give back in a way that makes them feel worthwhile of doing things. So that philanthropic side is always something that's really helpful for people when they're in that kind of a mindset. So yeah. I related, it was similar to why I started InvisiYouth as well. And then Mallori, kind of on your end of your work being an NP, what do you feel is that missing piece that might be through the setup of working in healthcare and then the well-being of those that are working in healthcare? Is there something that you feel like is like a missing link that would make that kind of synonymous in the workplace to be some more supported?
I would say that, so we talk a lot from the provider side about well-being. We talk about it for our bedside nurses. We talk about it for our nurse practitioners. We talk a lot about it, and we have some resources, but for whatever reason, I don't want to say they don't work. I don't mean it like that. It's just, they don't really resonate a lot. And trust me, I appreciate our organizations that are working really hard to try and address well-being and even mental health. And we have employee assistant type resources, but we don't, from kind of Shannon's perspective of what she's doing, we don't have that at a provider level, something like that. And I've actually, some of my colleagues, I've actually given them the Operation Happy Night, Happy Nurse, Happy Night. It's been a long week, guys. I've given them some of the resources to go and check out what's available. So just because you aren't working at the bedside or an outpatient clinic as a nurse and you're a nurse practitioner, these resources are still available, because I feel like when you get to that provider level, I feel like there's like that missing link. Like it just doesn't, the resources, they don't stick. We don't kind of keep with them. Whereas what Operation Happy Nurse provides is there's sustainability there. So I think that's what kind of in my world as a provider, that's missing. We talk a lot about it. We just haven't gotten to the point where we found something that really is as effective as I would hope it would be.
Can I make one note on that?
Yeah.
Actually? So Operation Happy Nurse, since I left the bedside, I wanted to maintain educated on what's going on in the world of nursing. So we started a nurse advisory board. And when I brought that topic, Mallori, that you're discussing to the nurse advisory board, they mentioned that a large reason that they personally don't use their organization's resources is because there's a lack of trust between them and the organization. So when there's something that's being provided by someone that they don't actually have that trust in, they're less likely to use it than an outside resource like Operation Happy Nurse.
Because you want to keep, you want to keep some of, and that talks to the stigma around mental health still, you know, and that's unfortunate. But I would agree with you, because I've had colleagues say the exact same thing. Like, maybe I don't want to use these resources because I don't want my organization or my work to know that information that potentially hold it against me. And I hope that, our colleagues work for an organization that would not do that. But I've heard the same hesitation as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's true, because there's so much focus for the nursing community to be giving a lot to their patients, and then for that flip to be able to give it back to yourself, or take the time you're telling your patients to give to themselves while they're going through their challenges in their health. No one's then pulling you aside to remind you to do the same thing for you, as you keep kind of reminding other people to do the same thing. And it is beneficial, like you both had mentioned, to have that separation at times of getting your working in one environment and getting your support in another, which is beneficial at times to even kind of know that is an availability for a lot of people. And I wanted to kind of go off of that and ask on Shannon's end. I know something I'll talk about often that I love about nurses is there's a lot more of an empathy from your schooling, of being taught bedside manner and instilling that empathy in the way that you practice your profession. But a lot of times you might feel like you're constantly giving, and how do you give back to yourself? So for nurses, what are tips or advice that you give of kind of building the boundary that is necessary, that you're providing that empathy that's needed to help your patients, but not providing so much that there's nothing left for yourself?
I think that the biggest step is not necessarily building those boundaries with your patients. I mean, you do have to build boundaries with your patients, but more building boundaries with your organization. If they're short-staffed, that's really not like your problem. I know that's so mean to say, but you are hired to work 3 shifts a week. If you are working your minimum shifts and you physically cannot work another one because of your mental health, setting that boundary to saying, I can't because this is going to make me regress mentally, physically, whatever. Regress, I don't like that word, but you know what I mean. If this is going to hurt me and take away from the cup that I'm trying to build up, then you shouldn't feel peer pressured or pressured into picking up a shift that you physically can't do. Because then, like you said, it will take away from the cup you're able to pour your patients, but more importantly, it'll take away from you filling up your own cup. So I think first and foremost, setting those boundaries within your organization is a massive way to help keep yourself afloat.
Yeah, that is really true. People don't tend to, in any profession, they always think I have to set boundaries with my coworkers or myself but to think of where am I constantly overgiving? Everybody always, you're going to worry about your profession or worry. I know for us in the chronic illness or disability space, you're constantly worrying, are people going to think I'm getting I'm getting too many accommodations. I'm getting any special treatment in quotes, which isn't, the playing field is just being equaled for you for those accommodations. It's not extras. You're just getting equal. But for that mindset of I should be axing, or I shouldn't have to do more just to prove anything. You're not proving you're a better nurse or a better worker by constantly over exerting yourself.
And if you want to do more, great, but that should be your decision. It shouldn't be forced upon you. And so for me personally, when I started at different hospitals as a travel nurse and they would ask me to come in more, I would only say yes when I wanted to say yes. And I feel that with that, I was able to, one, not get a million messages on my days off. Like if I wanted to pick up, I would inform them that I wanted to pick up. But if you always say yes, you're the first person they're going to go to, So it's like, if you want to pick up, great, do it for you because it makes you happy, because you want that extra cash, because you like being at work. I don't know, whatever reason it is, it doesn't really matter if you want to do it. But if you don't want to do it, it's okay to say no.
Yeah, I love Mallori was nodding her head. Yes, all of those messages, and yes, all of those you get.
Well, I think something that Shannon said really clicked a thought in my head is, as a nurse educator, I really want to push. I just had this conversation, no kidding, last week with one of my colleagues. I really want my goal this academic year to be to push this because I feel like in nursing we take care of everyone else, take care of everyone else, take care of everyone else. And we have that mentality because that is a huge part of our job. We pour into our patients and we give to the umpteenth degree. And that's why we're the most trusted profession. But I recently attended a conference and they talked about, they changed the terminology more a little bit away from self-care to more self-awareness. And if you think of the analogy of your heart, what does your heart do? Your heart takes care of itself first before it pumps oxygenated blood to the rest of our body, to our vital organs. But if our heart doesn't take care of itself first, it's no good for the rest of our vital organs or the rest of our body, period. And it's almost like we have to shift that mentality in the way that we educate our nurses. We talk about self-awareness or self-care kind of after the fact. And it's like we prioritize everything else except for our own well-being. And we think that that's selfish to prioritize ourselves. But if we don't do that, the cliche as it is, how do we pour from an empty cup? And that really, though, that is true. So how do we prioritize us first without thinking that that's selfish? Because that's not selfish. That's actually smart. And that is helping to truly care for ourselves so that we can then, be a nurse for, as your mom is, over 43 years without getting burnout or wanting to leave the profession, in its entirety. Because if you look at the data from the pandemic till now, nurses are leaving the profession at high numbers. And I mean, we can't have that because this is an amazing profession. We have to figure out how to prioritize taking care of us first so that we can be the absolute best nurses that we can be.
Yeah, that's really, and I was hoping one of you were going to use a medical analogy for something like this episode. So Mallori for the win. Mallori did it first. No, but that's really, it's so impactful because you have to be able to support yourself if you're in the work environment, but then also be aware of how you can support yourself out of the environment, because you can have stressors while you're on the job and you need to know how can I handle myself in those moments, but then also be able to know how, when I have longer time to reset, to talk to friends or family and really support myself, what can I do off the clock? And then what can I do on to really make sure I have all of those bases covered for myself in a job that you are dealing with patients that nobody's coming to see anyone in the healthcare community that's like brand spanking happy and like feeling great. Like, right. As a chronically ill person, I'm seeing you at a moment where I'm not super thrilled at all times, just because. So you have to always be mindful of, for them as well, that you're not seeing perky people all day long as well, and that can weigh on you. And how do I feed myself with that, so I'm able to constantly help them be their best when they leave my appointments. So I like how you both phrased that as well. It was really, it makes sense kind of in the nursing profession and then outside of it as well. Is really, it's wonderful. And my mom now is officially retired as of last year, and now my personal nurse. So I said she's never retired. She's mine now. But before we go into our second half of the show and our favorite segment for everybody, you know, story time is coming up soon. I wanted to thank all of our listeners and viewers who are watching or listening to the InvisiYouth chat sessions. You know, this is our first digital resource InvisiYouth had, and all of our resources are provided for free from wonderful donations and supporters. So we always do drop our donate link below that you can see on the screen or in our description and show notes, because 100% of every donation goes directly towards funding our programming and resources we provide for free all month long. Our 4 major resources and our digital interactive newsletter that has additional resources attached to that. So when you're able to donate, you know that every cent you give in a donation goes directly towards funding those resources. So we thank you guys for being supportive, sharing the link to family or friends if you can't donate, to maybe donate on behalf of you. And it definitely makes a big difference for us at InvisiYouth. So without further ado, we're going to everyone's favorite segment. It's So That One Time.
So that one time.
Everyone knows I love So That One Time because I get to sit back and relax and let my guests tell me a story. And we get double story time, everyone, because we have Shannon and Mallori telling stories. So I'm going to let the two of you decide who will go first in their Mallori looks worried, Shannon looks worried. So I don't know who's going to jump first for story time.
Shannon, what you got?
Okay, I'll go first. All right. So this story is about one of my board members, Dr. Pamela Caragori. So Dr. Pamela Caragori was actually one of my professors at Purdue University. After I graduated, she went to become interim dean of Purdue School of Nursing and is now a professor again at Purdue School of Nursing. But while I was there, Dr. Pamela Caragori was in charge of my leadership class, which, full circle moment, Mallori now teaches. So
oh, cool.
Very, very wild. But at the time, Dr. Caragori was my professor. And honestly, I was one of those students where I was very good at nursing. I was. But that being said, I wasn't super involved in things. I never joined the nursing fraternity. I never went to extra things. I would do the work and then I would leave, and that's how I was. But in this moment, when I'm sitting in this class with Dr. Caragori, I started speaking. I was answering a question. I was talking through something, and she turned to me, and her and I had never fully interacted. Yeah, she was my professor, but we weren't super close in the classroom. And so she turned to me, and after I'm done speaking, she goes, "You have a very authoritative voice." And I was like, literally no one's ever said that to me before. I've gotten, you have a weird voice. I've gotten, you sound like Miley Cyrus. I've gotten, do you sing? I've gotten so many things. I've gotten, is she sick or is that actually her voice? But I've literally never gotten, you have a very authoritative voice. And to this day, I remember that. And I think that for some reason, that comment, I think some people could have probably taken it what does that mean? Do I just yell at people? But I took it as, oh, I have an empowering voice. I have a voice that could make change. And so when I started the nonprofit, I thought about that all the time. I was like, wow, she really could kind of foreshadow what was going to happen because she just called me out for that. So when I was building my board, in the back of my head, I had so many professors at Purdue, but in the back of my head, I was like, I need Dr. Pamela Caragori on my board because she noticed something in me that I had never thought about or noticed myself. And it stuck with me to this point. I had been graduated from Purdue. She was my professor's senior year. I had been graduated for 3 or 4 years. And I still remembered exactly Dr. Pamela Caragori that one time in class. And so when I reached out to her immediately, she was like, yes, I will be on your board. Let's do this. This is amazing. I remember you. And I just amazing, like how one comment from one person can completely like give you the empowering feeling or give you the confidence to do something that in a million years you probably wouldn't think that you could do. And I believe that that's Dr. Kirigori. Another full circle moment in that class, we had to do research projects, and Dr. Kirigori and I were talking about this recently, and I did mine on like nurse mental health, essentially. Like I talked about stressors and stuff like that. I did my project on that. And I didn't even put 2 and 2 together until her and I were chatting and we came to that realization. Another full circle moment, goosebumps. You can't see them, but Dr. Kirigori, I hope she listens to this because that woman, I swear, she's one of the main reasons that I'm here today. Also, she brought me Mallori Walker. So here we are.
Oh,
yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. And I could probably tell a story about Dr. Kirigori as well, who has been a mentor for me and a very close personal friend. And I actually met her. I came back to be on a alumni panel in the leadership course. And it was then when they kind of finagled me to get into, to come back to teach. So Dr. Kirigori has had a huge impact in both of our lives. But I think, so my story, it's like a 1A and a 1B. Nursing is actually my second career. I had a whole life prior to nursing, an entire life and big girl responsibilities and everything. But when I was younger, I wanted to be one of 2 things, a nurse or a teacher. So my first degree is actually in education. So now I guess there's my full circle moment. I get to work with both of them, and my parents are happy that their money was wisely spent. Way back, 17, 18 years ago, unfortunately, my grandmother had a stroke and she was sick. And so my dad and I traveled to North Carolina to help take care of her. Now, this is part 1 of Mal's life in my former career. So we go to North Carolina, take care of my grandmother. She was very sick. She was not speaking. But I watched in the rehabilitation center how the nurses cared for my grandmother, and they saw me intently watching them. They probably thought something was wrong with me, but I was so like laser focused in the work that they were doing because they were speaking to my grandmother as if she was coherent and like, could speak back to them. And it was such a heartwarming, beautiful thing to watch. And at one point, the nurse said, do you want to help, give your grandmother the bath? And I mean, my dad always says, I leapt out of my seat and I was able to help. And I was just like studying how they were taking care of her. And then, they left and took care of their other patients. And I told my grandma, again, she was not awake. She was not really, coherent. And I said to her, because I watched how the nurses were still talking to her and they would tell me like, Mal, she can hear you. Like she can hear you. And so I told her, I said, Grandma, I think I want to be a nurse. And it was like the first time I actually like said it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea what that meant. I didn't think it was possible. I wasn't going to go to undergrad again and do another 4 years. That just wasn't in my career plans. And so fast forward a couple of days, my dad and I are getting ready to leave to head back to the Midwest. And I was, giving my grandmother a hug. Now we were there for a total, I think it was 5 days. It was 4 or 5 days. And my grandmother did not speak a word the entire time we were there. I give her a hug. Her nickname for me was Angel. And so I give her a hug and I go to leave, or I stand up and she says, as clear as day, she said, Angel, you go and be the best nurse you could be. Oh, tears. My dad's there. We're crying and we're like, what? That's the very last conversation I had with my grandmother before she passed away. So she is truly the reason that I became a nurse. And on the way home, I'm on my phone, like figuring out how to become a nurse. And within a couple of weeks of being home, I was meeting with the Purdue School of Nursing because I had worked at Purdue. I was meeting with the Purdue School of Nursing, and they were starting their second cohort of a second degree nursing program. And so, yeah, it's just amazing how I even became a nurse, but I attribute my career shift to my grandmother, and it's been the best decision that I made. And then I had a wonderful mentor at the Purdue School of Nursing that said, you are a pediatric nurse. This is what you need to be doing. And here I am. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I love that. Oh my God, that's so sweet. And like and to have that evolution of career as well, and you still kind of circled back to your original one anyway, is just so wonderful.
Yeah. And that's a cool thing about nursing. There are so many options that I don't think people realize. Like, you can be a nurse educator, you can be a school nurse, you can work in a jail if you want to, you can work in, occupational, there's so many avenues to being a nurse. And I think most people only think that you have to be working in a hospital or, something like that. There are so many options for nurses.
No, I love that. That's really great. That's transitions really well into our final segment. Chat me up.
Chat me up.
Hey, wanna chat?
Chat me up. You guys know, obviously, I host a podcast for you that I love chatting. So a segment all about chatting with our guests of ways that we can improve our communication with different groups of people is one that we love. So naturally, I wanted to have Shannon and Mallori talking about ways, from the perspective of nurses, how you guys as young adults with chronic illness and disability and your caregivers and parents and guardians, how we can build that dynamic and communication with the nurses in our lives even better. And for the new upcoming nurses coming in, since we have a lot of our audience is nursing and medical students, what are ways that you guys can really walk in and have the best communication with your patients? So Mallori, you just mentioned like that you work in the pediatric field. That's half of our population are pediatric, in that teen young adult space. So when you have worked with sort of that older population of pediatrics, have you noticed ways of communicating with them or ways they've communicated with you that have made those visits and building that relationship with them and their health journey the most successful or impactful with them?
Yeah. So you actually segued to my answer pretty well. I would say it's the building of the relationship, and then the communication comes. And I know that seems really weird in like a 20-minute, or 40-minute appointment. But one of my passions is giving a voice to those that are marginalized or sometimes feel like they don't have a voice. So on my badge, I wear a pronoun pin, and I have a safe space pin, because I want every single person that walks into my office to know, I don't care who you love. I don't care what the color of your skin is. I don't care who you believe in, who you pray to. If you don't pray, I don't care. It doesn't matter, because the person I'm looking at is just that. You are a person, you are a human being, and you deserve every, I don't want to say every ounce of me, but you know what I mean? You deserve my respect and my care, and that's what I'm going to do. So when you walk into my clinic and you walk into my exam rooms, that's what you're going to get. So before I've even introduced myself, I've had patients say, hey, I like your pins. And it's a great conversation starter. And my mentality is I often will, if it's a new patient, most of my patients in pediatrics, if they're teenagers, I've cared for you for the last couple of years. So we usually have a rapport, but if they're new, usually I will say to them something along the lines of, hey, what do you need me to know so that I can take the best care of you? And they're like, what? Like, no, what? And sometimes it really does. It takes them aback, but I want to know, they might be there for a sports physical, but they might have just broken up with their partner, and that's all they can think of. So you know what? Let's take 5 minutes and talk about it if that's what you need. And, allow me to be that ear that you may need. And maybe you'll allow me to give you a hug at the end and let you know it's going to be okay. So the trust, you build the trust. And then I tell you, teenagers, they'll tell you anything. So, and sometimes with some teenagers, it's harder, but I will tell you, having those pins on my badge has been a game changer. It's a conversation starter. It's an immediate trust builder, which, you know, in teenagers, that's sometimes really difficult. That rapport is difficult to establish, but, my favorite, I wanted to teach high school. So I love that age group where many people in pediatric want the babies. I love the babies. Y'all can have them. Give me the teenagers. And we're, you know, because you can talk to them and I can joke with them and, you know, say like, I know you're lying. Tell me the truth, you know, and I can talk to them a little looser than I can with the parents of the 9-month-old, you know, that's worried about their baby not crawling. So I love that age group. So I think for me, it's a little bit easier to establish the rapport, but it's trust and it's communication. And once you build that trust with them, you know, you're in for the rest of the time that they're with you. So that's kind of how I approach my day, and just letting them know that you care. It's huge and it goes a long way.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, asking what you would like them to tell you, giving them, especially in the chronic illness and disability space, a lot is out of your control because of the diagnosis you have. So for someone in the healthcare space to give you a sense of control, of being able to kind of take a bit of direction, it's so important. We always say we call it the why factor. If you don't understand something or don't know why you have to do something, always ask the why questions so that your nurses or doctors can engage with you more, because they're going to want to meet you where you're at. And so feel comfortable asking those questions back. And it kind of even goes on Shannon's end. Shannon has all the babies in her experience. So if Shannon's patients talk to her, she would probably be a Nobel Peace Prize winner or something. Yeah. But do you feel from working with the parents and guardians and caregivers, what you feel has made successful communication for you dealing with the adults that are in the room when you're talking about their child's health and what that means? Because if you're at that high level of stress, which is something I know with chronic illness, it can be phenomenal one day and they're in the hospital the next, and that can be very stressful for the whole family experience. So how do you feel like when you're navigating those emotions and then you need to talk to your healthcare team, what has kind of worked well for you to make that bond and that communication easier?
So I got another story, but first I'm going to say, Mallori, I floated to peds, and when my patients, I took care of like a 2-year-old, and she said something to me, and I was like, I don't know how to talk to you. Like, I don't know what to do. So like, you guys are great, and I'm with you through and through, 100%. The babies are the best. But one thing I will say is that what I like to remind myself, and the story will come into play here, but what I like to remind myself now after this experience that I had is that I learned medical terminology. I think it was freshman year of college. And when I was learning it, I was like, this is a different language. I don't know what any of this means. And I remember being a little overwhelmed trying to remember everything. But as you go and as you move on, you kind of forget that that is a different language to people because it's so natural to you. You write all your notes in that way. You talk to the nurses in that way. You talk to the doctors in that way. You talk to everyone within that terminology. So I had forgotten how not everyone knows the words that we're saying until my uncle and my aunt had a not premature baby. She was term baby. She went home and she ended up with a heart arrhythmia that caused her to go into the neonatal ICU in Boston. And so I was a NICU nurse at the time, and I went to Boston to help them out. And the doctor's here talking to us. I'm understanding everything that he's saying. I'm understanding everything that the nurses are saying. And then he walks away. And my uncle's like, I have no idea what they're talking about. I don't know what they just said. I'm really stressed out, like all this stuff. And I was just dumbfounded because I hadn't really had anyone like tell me that they didn't get what I was saying. I didn't really have anyone approach it. They just nodded. But I saw my uncle and aunt do the same exact thing. And then the moment they walked away, they were like, what does this mean, Shannon? I don't know what they're saying. Like, is this a problem? And so after that, I realized that I needed to open that communication with my patients' families so that if they didn't understand something, they knew it was a safe space and that it wasn't something that the general population understands. So I started then going into my patients' rooms and saying, hey, if the doctor comes in or if I start saying something that you do not understand, please tell me, because sometimes we forget. We've been doing this for years and we forget that what we're saying is, you know, a different language. We forget that. So if you don't understand something that I'm saying, please let me know and I will rephrase it so that I can, one, do a better job caring for your patient and caring for you guys. And two, I can remember what is common knowledge and what is not. And I think that experience really helped open those gates of communication and made the families feel more safe in order to ask questions and in order to really understand what is going on, because a lot of the times we just like go and we forget that we're just going, and it's terrifying for people that we're doing that. But in our heads, we have our checklist, you know?
And if I can add to that,
Yeah.
I think maybe one other piece of advice, sorry, this is the educator in me. But another piece of advice is from both the patient side of it and the healthcare team side of it. We're a team. And I think both sides need to remember that. From the patient side of this is your body, this is your healthcare, this is your, and there's always been this hierarchy of the healthcare team and then the patient. And as you said, Dominique, just earlier in the segment or earlier in the show, we are taking care of people in their most vulnerable state. So they aren't thinking, I probably need to ask this question or I need to ask that question. So what Shannon was saying is kind of speaking to everyone, like meeting someone where they're at. Like that's huge when, we're taking care of patients, but also from the healthcare team side, we have to remember, because I know what tachycardia is, I can't say that word to the parents or the family and expect them to know that that has something to do with an elevated heart rate. They don't know that. So, but if I say your baby's heart is beating really fast, mostly everyone understands that. They know I have the job. They know I'm pretty smart. They know I'm probably pretty good at my job. I don't need to speak that language for, to prove that I'm worthy of taking care of them. So I think each of us from the patient side and from the healthcare provider side, we have to remember we're a team. Like this isn't a hierarchy. This is a team, and we all have the common goal. If we're in the hospital, it's to get them out of the hospital and get them as healthy as possible to get them out of the hospital. So I think if we can remember that, like this is a team, this is as important of a team as that your favorite sporting team, so remembering that I think is another piece that's really important when, if you're the patient or if you're a part of the healthcare team.
Yeah. That's really impactful. It's a great way to end the segment, because I was going to mention too, that's what we will talk about as well, is that to not think of that hierarchy, like you mentioned, Mallori, but really think of having that open communication that you're technically, they will always say your nurses and doctors are providing the service for you because you're the one going to them. So you need to kind of keep that in mind, that there is a level of you can control that environment for it too, of what you want communicated. And we'll always say, our last audio flash file, number 13, we did for our communicating with nurses and doctors. And we teach what's called messenger mindset, which is you're the ones that are a lot of healthcare providers are delivering the news, whether it's good or bad. So the way you kind of bookend it with that kindness, allow for questions to come after you deliver a message, because it could be a bad one, and allowing for that conversation to be open, of not just delivering the news and piecing out, but leaving that ending of a conversation is really impactful. So the fact that both of you touched on that from the patient side and then also from their family or caregivers that are coming with them in a lot of appointments is important for people to know. And it also makes the nurses experience better when they feel like they can walk in with ease going to a patient and seeing what's going on. So I really enjoyed both of your answers for that one. And then like I said, this is I was looking, we just ran out of time, and I can't believe we got to the end of this. I feel like now I'm going to want Shannon and Mallori on like every season now. They just made this so fun for me. We'll bring it back. So they have podcasts. I'll try and stalk myself over there and see. So, but I want to make sure everyone can find where Operation Happy Nurse is. So where could people connect with everybody?
We obviously have our website, which is www.operationhappynurse.org. That has a variety of our resources. It also has public resources for people who are not in the nursing profession. So check that out. We have our Instagram, which is at Operation Happy Nurse, our LinkedIn, also Operation Happy Nurse, and Facebook, also Operation Happy Nurse.
Perfect. We're going to make sure all of those are linked in the show notes and description. And as always, you can find InvisiYouth on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at InvisiYouth. And you can find InvisiYouth chat sessions on all audio podcast platforms as well. Mallori, Shannon, thank you both so much, for being nurses, because you both deserve an applause for that, and for being on the podcast. I had an absolute blast getting to chat with the both of you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And everyone else, I will speak with you soon. Bye.